My guest today is Wendy Cocke. She is the author of two best-selling books, Make Flex Work, which we're going to be talking about today, and Reimagine Your Work. She is the founder of Engineering Leadership Solutions, where she works with high-achieving technical professionals and organizations to think about work differently. Wendy spent over 20 years leading teams in Fortune 500 companies before opening her own company and joining the faculty at Georgia Tech. About 10 years into her career, Wendy pursued a flexible work arrangement to balance all aspects of her life. At the time, she was told that her career would stall and she would never move up in the organization. Little did anyone know that the change would be the catalyst that would propel her career as she worked her way from engineer to PMO director. Wendy has redefined success for herself according to her values. She believes that with her experience and her engineering mindset, she can help other people to do the same. Wendy, thanks for being with me today.
I am so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it is a pleasure. So tell me, just clarify a bit about what you're doing now, your day job, how you're balancing a career and teaching, being on the faculty and all of that. Just clarify what you're doing today.
So I call this stage of my career my first retirement, because after 20 years in the corporate world, I've retired from full-time corporate work, full-time for me, which was still a part-time job, but that corporate job being my primary focus. Today, I have three different income streams that I really enjoy. So the first is a passion I discovered after I left corporate, which is writing, speaking, and training. Absolutely love that. As you said, I've got two books, and I go and talk to organizations about how to think about work differently, how to think about their structure of their organization design, how to think about their hours, how to think about the way they put their teams together, those sorts of things. The second is the technical consulting. So as a part of Engineering Leadership Solutions, I have a small army, myself and some 1099 employees that are some of the best and brightest people I've worked with throughout my career. And we go and support program and project management and continuous improvement, mostly in small, mid-sized companies, but we've also done some Fortune 100 work there as well. Anything from fractional leadership to helping with a small project and anything in between. Mm-hmm. And then twice a week, I go down to Georgia Tech, where I support a cohort of 150 juniors as they learn how work works. I help them on a design class that I'm responsible with a few other faculty members, where the students are put into groups and go through the entire medical device process. That job allows me to continue that talent building, which is the part I missed when I left corporate. How do I continue to build talent? Well, now I can do it on a much more massive scale because I get 150 new juniors every semester.
Oh my goodness. Wow. All right. Well, before we talk about the book, I want to talk a little bit. I want you to recap your flex journey in corporate America. How did it start? Where did it go? Tell us a little bit about that story.
So this was about 15 years ago, little less than 15 years ago. And I was an up-and-comer in a Fortune 100 company. I was in R&D. I was running technical projects. I was doing all the things that it's meant to do to be successful in a career. And then I got pregnant. And I realized that maybe I didn't want to do all of that anymore. And within 3 months of coming back from maternity leave, I felt like I was failing at everything. I was not being a great wife. I was not being the employee that I was before I went out on maternity leave. I wasn't even being a good friend and coworker. I was short with my husband. I was frustrated with my child, and I was really frustrated with all of my coworkers. But honestly, I was just tired and I needed some relief. So I went to my boss. Luckily, I had an amazing manager at that time who was just a few years ahead of me. We had sort of grown up in the organization together. And he knew when I came and talked to him and I said, I need some help, that I had already exhausted all those other options. Well, he said, sure. And then we both sort of stared at each other blankly because neither of us actually knew how to get a flexible work arrangement. There was a policy as with most giant companies. But we didn't really know anybody that used that policy. So for us, there was one other technical woman on this 5-building campus that had a flexible work arrangement. So I went and I found her, we figured out the process. And as we started to navigate that process, there was another R&D project that had just bombed. It had failed every test it had passed or had tried to pass. They'd already boxed up the equipment and it was on a truck headed across the border to the manufacturing facility. And they needed me to step in and be the project leader. I didn't know what I was going to do because I was pretty sure that I wasn't going to be able to go part-time and take that new expanded role. As a matter of fact, I was told that I wouldn't be able to take that part-time arrangement if I took this other job. But then, as with a lot of things in corporate, it wasn't really a choice on if I was going to take that role. So there were a lot of tears. I got really close to quitting. My husband told me I could quit. And I had a dear friend who said, no, you can't quit. If you quit, they win. And she was right, because if I quit, they had to find someone else to do it, and maybe her, right? Like maybe somebody else that I cared deeply about was going to be in the same position. So it took me 11 months to get that part-time job. I refused to let go of that idea. At the end, about 3 months prior to the end of that 11 months, I convinced the VP of R&D to let me try it. I asked for a trial, a 90-day trial. And when he did not say no, I assumed he meant yes, because I believe no is just short for not yet. So he just hadn't said yes yet. And I started immediately. 90 days later, I pulled the whole team. I asked them, along the way to give me feedback. And I compiled all of that and I sent it to the head of R&D with a meeting that said, finalize the flexible work arrangement for me to go part-time. And he declined my meeting. And in a not so proud moment, I slammed my chair under my desk and I had a bit of a temper tantrum as I walked out into the hallway and down the long hall as I saw him coming towards me. And he was waving his arms like air traffic control, Sarah. He was like, no, don't say anything. Don't say anything. And as we got close enough where we could hear each other, he said, before you say anything, just know that I saw your email. And I was like, yeah, and you declined it. Thank you. And he said, I declined it because I didn't know you had started. And if I didn't know you had started, it must not have been a problem. Just give me your form. We don't need a meeting. So this patience, this 11-month journey finally got what I needed. And I've never worked a full-time schedule since. I got promoted faster after going part-time than I did before, because I was focused, because I was intentional, and because I was able to be who I needed to be there.
So I think there are a couple of lessons in that story. And patience is one, and you highlighted that. But I think the idea of starting with a trial, what I call a pilot, is another one that makes sense. And the fact that you don't have to get it perfect right at the very beginning. And that's what was behind your polling of your team. So I think there are 3 really good lessons in that.
Yeah, one of the things I did with the team when I walked back that first day when I decided I was starting, because he had not said no that time. It was not the first time I'd asked him. He'd said no a lot of times. And one time he did not say no. So I took that as a yes. And, I walked out of the team and I said, look, I need this. I know I need this. And I also knew that this team needs to be successful. So this is a team effort. If there is any moment that you need something from me and you're not getting it, I need you to tell me and I will adjust. If there is any time when you feel like I'm not doing what I need to do or keeping up my end of the bargain, I need you to tell me and I will adjust. At the end of the day, business is responsible for getting business done. And although I had a way I wanted to get it done, if business needed to get done differently, I needed to be able to adjust to that.
So I talk a lot to my clients and on this podcast about the importance of getting your individual needs met. But the point that you're making that I think is important is the company has needs as well. And part of this trial and error process is finding that balance between the company needs and your needs. And I think you did a beautiful job, excuse me, in doing that.
Well, and I think it's important to know that is a flexible work arrangement. When I talk to clients about these non-traditional work arrangements, I remind them that as soon as we take the word flexible out, it's just another work arrangement. And the key is the flexibility. And some weeks the company is going to win, and some weeks you are going to win. You're not in competition with each other, as long as everyone gets what they need on the macro scale. So we have to pull back our lens of what it looks like to be successful. Maybe today is a 6-hour day, and maybe tomorrow is a 9-hour day. Because that, maybe the board of directors is in and you need to be there because that's what your job entails. Well, that's okay, because when your child is in something important and you want to be at that event, you expect the company to give for you. So you have to give when it's time. I continued to travel on a part-time schedule, and I think a lot of people think you cannot travel on a part-time schedule. Well, of course, that week is not very part-time. I'm in Atlanta, getting up and driving to the Atlanta airport, sitting there for the number of hours, flying to a place, having a dinner with a client, getting up the next morning, doing all those things. Of course, that's not a part-time week. But next Friday, when you want to go support field day at the elementary school, that's probably not meeting all of your hour commitment there either. It's a give and take. Every week has got to be different.
Very good point. So why did you want to write a book?
I didn't want to write a book. As a matter of fact, I had been gifted a book on how to write a book, and I had put it away. I know, right? So I have a mentor who said, Wendy, you do something different. Several important mentors in my life said, I've never seen somebody be able to navigate a flexible work arrangement the way I had done it. I believe my engineering brain and my study of people, which is sort of my nonfiction people study, that's my hobby. When I put those together, it's like two really interesting pieces of a puzzle. So a friend gave me a book and said, I need you to write it. And I said, you are crazy. I am a chemical engineer. We don't write books. And he said, well, just here, have it. And I set it on the shelf. And I don't know about you and your listeners, but I have this stack of books that I'm going to read. And then I sort of get to them when the time is right. Within 30 days, the only thing left in my stack was the book on how to write a book. I had read everything else. And then for 30 more days, I read nothing because I could find nothing else that interested me. And this book was just staring at me on my nightstand. So I finally picked it up and I said, well, the author will not know that I'm not writing a book. I'll just read it. And within 60 days, I had 40,000 words written just from picking up that book.
Wow.
Yeah. Sometimes the universe just tells you you're supposed to do something.
Okay. So what's the message, the key message in your book?
So making flex work is about thinking of ourselves as the system, the process, or the machine, and doing what we all do to systems, processes, and machines, which is optimizing them. So I bring an engineering perspective, which is if I am the machine and I want to optimize it, how do I do that? I have a 4-step method in the book called the EVAL-uation method, EVAL. E is every hour counts. It's understanding our current state. It's understanding what we are already doing. It is creating a baseline depending on the industry or the type of work that your listener is in. We can't change anything until we know what it is. The second step, EV, is valuing optimized work. This is if we were a machine, we'd be dialing in the knobs just to get it right. If we were a process, we would be getting that feedback and figuring out where is the waste in our process. And for us, it's looking around saying, what are the tasks that take me longer than everyone else? What are the tasks that I put off because they're hard? What are the tasks and the things that are slowing me down? And then figuring out problem-solving ways to optimize that. The third step is that's assessing the expectations. Once we've optimized everything, now we need to understand, is it bringing us value? And by us, I mean me value or the company value. Because in the business world, if we're doing activities that do not bring us personal value or organizational value, we should be questioning why we are doing them. So you've optimized it. Now you start to say, is it bringing me or the company value? And sometimes it used to bring you value and it doesn't anymore. Maybe there's a committee you got on years ago that it's time to let a more junior person serve on that committee and free up your time. Maybe there's an activity that brings you a lot of passion, that you have a lot of passion for, but there's a way you could delegate that to someone else so they could also develop that passion. That's the A. And then the L, this is my continuous improvement background, my engineering background. It's leveraging small changes. It's R&D on yourself. It's Kaizening yourself. It's about trial and error. It's about trying something and seeing, is that better or worse? And if it's better, do more of it. And if it's worse, don't do it again. It's about being flexible and creative.
And if I could add in this eval method, you have lots of really easy to use tools to actually work through that process. And one of the tools that you talk about is tracking your time on 15-minute increments, which is something I have done for years, and I thought I was just OCD about it. But you're actually validating this is a really good way of getting a handle on what you were doing now.
It is. And I think it is, what I have found is that it is eye-opening in a lot of ways to write down your time. And so you're right. Thank you for the confidence in the tools. They are all available for free on my website, makingflexwork.com. They are all there for any listener that wants to download them for free. I have found that people will ask for a reduced schedule, and then I ask them to fill this out for a week. And it does not have to be a Monday to Friday week. I say start tomorrow. Whatever tomorrow is, that is the start of the week. Just start it tomorrow. I have had people come back and say, oh, I wasn't actually even working 30 hours. I thought I was overworked and I needed things off my plate. But when I really looked at it, I wasn't actually even working 30 hours. I was just working a lot of a span of time. So I ask people to think about, when is the first time you engage with work in the morning? If you're like me, you have it on your phone and you engage with work before your feet even hit the floor. I need that time when it's still quiet in my house to understand what my day is going to look like. So I may engage at 5:55 in the morning sending out emails, but my brain is now on for work. It knows work has happened. My husband, on the other hand, he doesn't do that. He goes to his laptop. The work lives in his laptop. So for him, when the work starts at 7:30 or 8, the work starts at 7:30 or 8. It doesn't stop. Right? He works straight, where my day might go from 5 in the morning until 7 at night. But I might only work 6 hours during that period of time. His day is much more controlled. It's more from 7:30 to 4:30, but he's working that whole time. Neither of us is doing something right or wrong. It just feels different. And a lot of times, if people are working early in the morning or late at night, they think they have worked more than they have actually worked.
And I have learned from that exercise of having done it for many years that if I will block the time that I'm going to allocate to work on my calendar, and granted, it works better now that I'm not so much in the corporate world because I'm not getting the interruptions that I used to get. But if I block that time and try and get things done within that time period, I'm able to balance better. So,
right.
But well, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and being really honest with yourself. When so many of us switched to a hybrid model or a work from home model with literally no training, no forethought, and no intention in 2020. So all the things you would do if you were making a major career change, none of us did. We all just went home. And for people that still are in that mode and they haven't thought about it, laundry does not take up a lot of time, and yet it does take you away from work. So if you are doing laundry during the day, excellent, love it for you. If it works, do it. But understand that while you are folding laundry, you are not actually working.
Correct. But it could be a scheduled break.
That's right.
And that's the key, is just to get clear about that.
It's just about being intentional and not letting the day disappear.
Are there any other tools that you want to accentuate that are in the book?
So for making flex work, I think if your audience just grabbed onto the evaluation method, I would feel like my job was done. But we also have some tools about managing your presence, which I think in a hybrid world could be really important for your listeners. If you're only going to be in the office a limited amount of time, you cannot take for granted that time in the office. in-person time should be valued at a different level than your remote work. Thinking about doing the right work at the right time. If you are going to work and sitting there with your noise canceling headphones on, doing heads down focused work, the question in my mind is, why did you spend the commute time to do that? Instead, if you are going to be in a place with other humans that you can interact with, you should be intentionally interacting with those humans. You should be building the relationships and doing that collaborative work that is so much easier in person. And it will hold you through those periods of time when you are not together. So I tell my clients that just like if you were going on a business trip, if you had booked an airline ticket, you wouldn't not have a plan. You would have an agenda for when you landed. You would know where you're having dinner. You would know what time you were going in the next day. You would know what you were doing. If you're only going to be in the office a very small portion of your time, you should be treating the office as a business trip. Who else is going to be there? Who do I need to see? What's important while I am there? And then it won't matter that you're only in the office a few days a week or a few days a month, because you will be able to build those relationships that we've all done with clients and vendors. Now we just need to have those same intentional conversations with our coworkers.
I'm really glad you brought that up, because I have individual clients who complain about the phenomenon of proximity bias, that managers and leaders will pick people for special assignments based on their being around. They see them more often. And I tell them, yeah, but managing that is your responsibility. And here's how you can be conscious about doing that, particularly if you're working remote. So I'm really glad you brought that tool up.
Yeah, for most of my management career, I've had one or more remote employees. And I will tell you that remote employees who manage that relationship well are not a victim of proximity bias. Because as a manager, you feel like you have that same close relationship, but it is very much the case that you could become out of sight, out of mind if you are not being intentional to stay top of mind. And we have so many technology advantages now that we even had 5 years ago that allow you to really play with that ability to how you build connections. We can be on a video where we can actually see each other's faces in a way that we could not before. And people are visual creatures. And so turning that camera on, even when you don't want to, can really help to build a relationship. If you're the only face they see and everybody else is a little black circle with their initials on it, you are building a stronger connection than everyone else.
So Wendy, you've had a very interesting career, and you've proved that flex can work if you're patient and take the responsibility for working on it. And you've written a book to help people get started on doing this on their own, or for finding the balance that works for them. Is there a question that I didn't ask you that I should have asked you that would help our listeners really realize that finding the right balance for them is within their prerogative and their control?
The only question I think that still remains is, what do I do if I'm the leader? And so many of my employees want this flexibility, and I don't know what to do. And so I'm going to answer that question to the individual, which is understand that your leader did not get some magic training on how to do this. Your leader and your leader's leader, all the way up to the CEO, for them, nothing from a business perspective has changed. They still need to deliver those business results. And so if you can partner with them to help them feel comfortable, to reduce their feeling of risk, then you're going to be more successful. And if you are a leader and you really want to embrace flexibility with your team and you don't know how, start small. Just figure out something you can say yes to and try it. And then find something else you can say yes to and try it. I had a client who was concerned about a woman who needed to go to the bus stop. And she said, well, what's really inconvenient is that we have a weekly team meeting and she takes the notes. And so her being at the bus stop is really difficult because she cannot take notes at the bus stop. And I stopped my friend and I said, why does this one person need to be the note taker? Well, that's who's always done it. And I said, okay, well, what if like one day somebody else did it and we just see what happens? Because the person could still put their earbud in and walk to the bus stop. So like she could still be engaged in the conversation. And she came back and she says, you know, we tried last week. We rotated around and a different person every day took the notes and nothing bad happened. Excellent.
Okay.
Excellent. So just find the one thing that you can say yes to and give it a shot.
Very good advice. Wendy, thank you so much for being with me today.
I have had an absolute blast. Thank you, Sarah.